Good evening, everybody. We are live from Mansfield Parks and Recreation, and we are here to talk about the master plan. My name is Ann Beck. I am Marketing and Communications Manager, and I'm here with Matt Young, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone.
We are so excited to get started. We've been working on this for almost 2 years now. I think we eat, sleep, and breathe it, but we know that everybody out there doesn't know all the details and can't recite it in your sleep. So we're going to go over everything you need to know, everything you might be wondering, and answer your questions. So if you've got questions, type them at any point in the meeting. Just type them right in the comments, and we will get to them as we can. And otherwise, you can also send us an email, and we will get to them later. Also, be sure and check out our website, mansfieldparks.com. There's a little button right there for the master plan. It has all the details, all the projects, everything you ever wanted to know. So, ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first up, we're going to talk about what exactly is a master plan.
Okay, so a master plan in the Parks and Recreation world is essentially a guide that we will use over the next 10 years to prioritize and implement projects, develop and implement policies, plan events and programs at our parks and our rec facilities, and essentially just really drive everything that we do on a daily basis, trying to deliver the best quality parks and programs for Mansfield residents that we possibly can. So it's a big task and something that we'll use for long-term and short-term implementation.
Very good, yes. And I know I have said to people a few times before that it's sort of a to-do list. It's somewhere between a to-do list and a wish list, because not everything in the plan is a guaranteed going to happen. But it's also not just big, lofty goals. It's ambitious but achievable is the phrase that I like to go with. So we definitely want to get it all done, and it's all about laying out the strategies that we can get it done and making sure that we're staying accountable to the public so that you guys know what our priorities are and what we're working on, and can check in with us and say, where's that project you talked about? So it's important. It's definitely important. Most important is to have all the feedback from the public to make sure that it really is a plan that reflects what all the residents want and not just what staff thinks we should have or what experts or industry things tell us. So lots that goes into it, but lots of fun too. So we start off by looking at our inventory. So explain how that works, Matt.
Okay, so we first start and take a look at everything we have, which right now is a little over 1,000 acres throughout the park system. We have 20 developed parks, 5 public-private partnerships, and just dozens of amenities of all types. So we gather all that information. We look at the condition of every one of those assets. So we evaluated every park, every asset within them, every playground, every baseball field, every lighting pole, basketball court, on down the list, and do an analysis of that to know what shape they're in. Do things need to be repaired? Do they need to be replaced? And so we gain an assessment of all of that. And then we also look at, as we transition into standards, what we're missing. But the first thing is to kind of take a look at that and know exactly what we have.
Yeah, and part of inventory too is an inventory of the people. So it's knowing who lives in Mansfield now, where do they live, and where are parks relative to where people are, and who's ages of everybody, interests, what kinds of things do Mansfield residents like to do. Certainly you could go to different parts of the country and things like rugby would be popular that would not be popular here. All sorts of things like that, and also even just environmentally, with Texas, we're able to spend more time outdoors than other parts of the country. So all of that kind of stuff goes into inventory. Also looking ahead to the inventory to come, since this is a 10-year master plan. So who are we going to have 10 years from now in our inventory of people, so to speak?
Yeah.
Then we get into the standards, which is more of a, you can explain what standards are.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point too. Accessible parks and facilities is critically important to us. So while we have 1,000 acres, is it equitably distributed around the city? Do we have playgrounds in every quadrant of the city? So our inventory, in some regards, we may look like we have more than other neighboring communities, but it may not be equitably distributed. So we want to take a look at that as well. As we get into standards and benchmarks, our current plan that was adopted in 2010 has plans or standards for every kind of amenity and park type. And so one per X so many thousand people, for example. And so we take a look at that. We now know what we have in our inventory that we've assessed. And then we look at our standards and see, well, how do we stack up to that? Are we ahead of that curve? Are we behind that? We look at national standards and trends around the country as well. But as Ann referenced, every community is a little bit different. And so while the Northeast may look at lacrosse or rugby a little bit different, or ice hockey, than we do in Texas. And so we really start drilling down locally and taking a look at how we stack up to our adopted standards. We look at the growth, and as Ann referenced, our population has increased rapidly over the last 10 years. And so in some areas we've kept pace with our growing community, and in other areas we have not. Trends have changed. And so when we look at our standards, we may need to change our standards based off of what is now more popular or less popular to Mansfield residents. And so we take a look at that, as well as look at benchmarks. We try to look at other communities, especially similar population, similar demographics and interest to Mansfield, to kind of see how we stack up. That's usually a pretty good indicator of what is popular and trending in other communities, and then try to look and see, is that also important to Mansfield residents, and what do we need to do to catch up for those standards.
Yeah, and benchmarks are really important because, I mean, on one hand, you've got, our residents should have, Mansfield's slogan is minutes to everything, second to none. So our residents expect to be minutes to everything that they would want to do, and all of those facilities and options to be second to none in quality. So, we want to make sure that we're offering the best, or at least, the best we can do for all of those things. But also it's something to think about for future residents and businesses, because if you're moving in from the area, we experience so much growth, and that has a lot to do with the health of our economy, is the growth that we've had, that it's able to keep Mansfield doing so well and so successful because it's continued to grow. But new people that are coming in, if they're going to be comparing, well, if I could go to this other city and have these other options, then that's a huge thing. Quality of life things like parks are a huge factor in businesses growing and new development and new neighbors. So we want to be sure that we're keeping up to the second to none standard that we like to set here in Mansfield. So that was another key part of the thing. And then the next factor that we looked into is what people want. So as we said before this, the public feedback is incredibly important. We really want to make sure that all the decisions that we're making really reflect what people need and what they want. And so we spent about 4 or 5 months in 2019 doing public engagement just like this. So we had some meetings, we had some videos, we had lots of surveys, and all sorts of different opportunities for people to give us their opinion. We had some focus groups with some targeted audiences, and really got into the details of what everybody is really interested in and what they really would want to see in their parks.
Yeah, every step of the public engagement has been extremely rewarding for me and our staff. Just getting to engage and interact with the public, hear direct comments and feedback. We know that Mansfield residents love the Parks and Recreation system. It's nice to hear those things. We enjoy that very much. Take great pride in the fact that we've won the gold medal from Texas Parks and Recreation Department 3 times in our history. But at the same time, we know that there are things that we're lacking. There's things that we can do better, that we can improve upon. And so getting that direct feedback from public, and then seeing how many other people are saying that. We've had requests for just about any kind of activity under the sun. And some are overwhelming, and everybody is saying the same thing. And some are maybe not as popular, but there's a place for all of the activities. And so having those conversations, even in our open house last week, we had a steady stream of people coming in, and just being able to talk, even with social distancing and mask on, in that format was rewarding. It was a long day, but it was a good day because we got to hear what residents really want in their Parks and Recreation system. So while I've been in this industry for 25 plus years and have a pretty good idea what it is, every community is different, and so hearing that directly from our residents it will help drive the next 10 years for our department.
Absolutely. And we do have the online survey, as I said at the beginning. If you go to mansfieldparks.com and click on the tab for the master plan, you can take the survey and give us your feedback. And we truly want honest feedback. Please don't feel like you're hurting our feelings because we would rather know if there's something that bothers you, if there's something we need to be working on, we'd much rather know now versus waiting 10 years from now and then realizing that we left everything behind and we have even more to catch up on. So whatever you can say, whatever you can add, there's no request too big or too small. We had a request for a dolphin zoo. I don't know that one's going to make the list. I love dolphins, but I'm not entirely sure Mansfield has the space or the climate for that, but we'll take it. Whatever it is we can get, we will absolutely take it. Okay, so then all of those things combined, looking at our inventory, what we have, looking at the standards, what does everybody else have, the benchmarks, what should we have, and all the public feedback of what everybody wants. The committee that worked with us was able to put these things together into 4 basic focus group areas. So we identified 4 areas where the need is the greatest and there are the most issues. So we're going to go through those one by one. So first up is playgrounds.
Yeah, playgrounds historically are always going to be one of the most requested amenities. They're so important to our children's growth, physically, mentally, emotionally, being able to interact and with other kids on the playground and strengthen their fine motor skills. There's so many positive aspects to playgrounds, and so that's one of the reasons we get that request. And right now we're on the kind of the down curve of our growth in the Parks and Recreation system. We built a lot of parks in the late 90s, early 2000s. So when that happens, we start to see our infrastructure start to age. The average life expectancy of a playground is 10 to 15 years, kind of depending on the usage of that. And right now, our average playground is almost 9 years old. And so we've got to take that into account over the next 10 years, that some of our playgrounds are not going to make it. So we need to plan ahead so that they don't fall in disrepair. We can continue to stay with the trends and new development and amenities within playgrounds. But we also have to deliver playgrounds in those areas of town that we don't have playgrounds already, and pay attention to how our community is growing with the different areas. We're still just slightly over 60% developed. So a lot of more people are going to be coming in the future. And so we need to make sure we're delivering playgrounds in those areas as well. Shade, convenience is also very important. We're hearing that from the public, and the hot Texas summers and even spring and fall sometimes come into play. And so we don't have shade on some of our playgrounds, and residents, what we're hearing is they like to see that incorporated. So playgrounds is definitely one of our focus areas.
Absolutely. Playgrounds definitely came up as one of the most common reasons people go to the parks. And also, I think the third most common comment of a request for what would you like us to add was a park near my house, which we kind of qualified under playgrounds because that's where we have the issues of the proximity not lining up. That we are well aware that there are a lot of you guys that do not have a park near you. And so it was written in different forms in different ways. Some people said a park near my street or a park, by this school or whatever. But the main idea is you guys would like parks closer to you, which is, we talked about those standards. The National Park and Recreation Association would like for people to live within a 10-minute walk to a park. And we're at about 20% of our residents which live within a 10-minute walk to a park. Nationally, the average is...
It's about 50%.
About 50%. So across the country, about 50% of people live within a 10-minute walk. But in Mansfield, only about 20% of you. So we would like to fix that, for sure. Next focus area is recreation and aquatics.
Yeah, this is a big area. Recreation-wise, those of you that have visited the Mansfield Activity Center, or as we call it, the MAC, was built and opened in 2001, so we're getting close to 20 years. It was built in phase 1 with plans for a phase 2 in the future. It was a high priority in our 2010 plan, and we just haven't been able to get to it just yet. But the feedback that we've received this round continues for people to say, we want that phased expansion. We want another gym. We want indoor fitness. We want indoor aquatics. We need more program space. Right now, we're very challenged between all of the different user groups to accommodate all those needs. And so we from quarter to quarter look at the programs and how well they're doing and have to make hard decisions on, which tap and ballet class or which basketball class we can offer the next quarter just because of the limited space. And so we're hearing from the public that expanding the MAC continues to be a high priority. And so it's a big ticket item. That's the hardest part about it. It's not like we need $1 million. We need between 20 to 50 million, depending on what we want to put in that facility. In addition to that, one of the things that came out of the focus group was someone said, we want a Big Mac. And what they meant by that was what some of our neighboring communities have is a large multi-generational recreation center that has multiple gyms, multiple areas for fitness, multiple areas for seniors or active adults, is what we call them in today's Parks and Recreation world, lots of programming space and aquatic options, both indoor and outdoor. The sky's the limit on that. Some communities have built $100 million facilities, so just depending on how you implement that. But we kind of like that term came out of the focus groups was a Big Mac. They want something like the Mac, but bigger, and lots of references in our benchmarking to other communities. And then on the aquatic side, lots of comments and feedbacks and requests for that. The Hawaiian Falls Water Park is one of our public-private partnerships. So that is a city-owned facility. We outsource the management of that to a private company, but that is a city water park. And then in 2017, we added the splash pad at Clayton Chandler Park. Very, very popular. So we've since day one, we've had people say, when can we have more? And so that the kind of the theme that we've heard over the last year and a half from our input is we want more splash pads. We want some indoor facilities, a lot of lap lane and kind of indoor aquatics and fitness kind of programming can be done year round. And then also some smaller family aquatic facilities, not quite as big as Hawaiian Falls, but maybe have a couple of lap lanes, a zero depth entry, ability for swim lessons, and then a couple of slides. Lots of opportunities for the little kids in a smaller setting, not as big as Hawaiian Falls or Hurricane Harbor, those kind of facilities, but something that's more community-based. And so this is a big area. Lots of focus on recreation and aquatics should come out of this plan.
Okay, so we're having some technical issues. Some people are saying that the feed is cooking out, so we're going to stop this feed and start right over again. So you guys just refresh the page and we'll have a new video starting in just a few seconds. Good. Let me make sure that this has come up. Yep. Nope, that's the last one. There we go. Okay, guys, we are back. Hopefully this works. You guys let me know if it's better, you're getting a better signal here. The full video is going to be posted on our website also, so if you missed any part of the conversation, the video will be up on our website later on this evening after we finish it. So it's all being recorded. It'll all be up there, so if you missed out on anything, we can catch back up. We were just discussing the heavy demand for rec center, both an expansion of the MAC to add some indoor fitness and aquatics, and a new rec center, and then lots of aquatics. Splash pads wherever we can put them, some kind of family aquatic center. I know, we talked a little bit about like the benchmarks and things. The one thing I probably heard the most is the Brick in Burleson. That's the facility that gets cited, at least to me, the most often is the Brick, which if anybody's been there, they have birthday parties, they have the indoor water park, they have lots of fitness, lots of classroom space, senior space, all sorts of a good, diverse, what we call a multi-generational recreation center. All the syllables there in that, but it really kind of hits all the tones. And another, issue with recreation is, another way we can combat that aside from creating just a big facility is trying to add in little bits of recreation to existing parks. So outdoor fitness equipment like we have at Chandler and Rose Parks, adding things like tennis courts, adding disc golf course, any kind of different variety in recreation options so that people have more things to do and more places to do them. We definitely saw during the pandemic everything closed down and the park stayed open.
Yeah.
So we know you guys love the parks, and it's great that we can offer a healthy and safe place for people to get outside, get fresh air, and keep their body moving. And we just want to be able to offer as much variety in that as possible so that you guys can keep doing that.
Absolutely.
So next one, athletic fields, go.
Yeah, so this is a popular one. Actually, a year before we started the overall park system master plan, because the athletic fields are such a big part of what Mansfield is about and so popular and necessary in today's world, we actually went through some survey processes and public meetings specifically about athletic fields so that we could gather information and feedback from all of our user groups and the public, because we knew that it was going to be a big focus area in this, and it does continue to be. Largely what we're seeing on our standards and hearing from the public is that with our population the way it is right now and our participation rates, that we're probably okay on the number of fields for a little while, but people want better. And so we know that Skinner Sports Complex, for example, turns 24 next month, 24 years old. So you can't have a facility that's 24 years old and not reinvest in it. You go and play in tournaments and leagues in other communities, and people come back and say, why can't we? Why can't we have this kind of covered shade areas or red brick concession buildings or fancy this or fancy that? But we also know that the complex is lacking in some basic infrastructure. We don't have enough permanent paved parking. We don't have enough restroom facilities to serve the number of fields that we've added since opening the park in 1996. So that's the biggest theme. And then at the other primary facility for youth girls softball at McKnight Park East, also 30 years old and needs some reinvestment. Originally was designed as an adult complex, and so new fences have been placed in there to accommodate youth for many years, but we need to redevelop that complex as well. So one of the great things that's happened in the last couple of years is that we were able, with city council guidance and some funding, was to be able to purchase 137 acres in the southwest quadrant of the city. The neighborhoods are still growing in that area, but hopefully in the next few years, the infrastructure, streets, and utilities will be out in that area of town. And so what we'd like to do is go ahead and start phase one and add some athletic fields there, then be able to slowly close some of the older fields at Skinner and McKnight so that we're not disrupting their seasons, can move sports to the new fields, and then start redeveloping our existing fields. And so the feedback we've heard from the public is that they want better, and then as the population continues to grow, we'll monitor those standards and participation rates to see how many more we will need as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing about that we get questions a lot about Skinner and why improvements haven't been done and things. But if you've been to a baseball or any sort of athletic complex that's been built more recently, you will know that the layout is very different than what we have at Skinner. It's just a more modern style, a more modern take on it, and also just because of the way the expansion happened. Generally, you'll have smaller parking lots spaced around the complex so that you can park right near your kids' fields. It's easier access for everybody and things like that. And so there's a lot of layout options that really need to be done at Skinner. So we don't want to waste the money and put the tax money into building a big bathroom complex when really the bathroom complex needs to be moved over to a different location in order to be a more efficient use of the whole space. So we really want to have the very best possible fields that we can, so that they will last a lot longer, and so that they will really be the best for everybody. So. And yeah, we talked about participation numbers, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's a national trend that recreation sports participation is down. Kids are playing select sports at a younger age. It used to be a high school thing, and now you start really young. More kids are specializing, and they only play baseball or they only play soccer. So there's a lot of different reasons why all those trends are going downward, but we're seeing it in our participation numbers, and so we just want to be aware of that so that, again, we're just building exactly what we need. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So a lot to do there, a lot to do there, but we think it'll be really great in the end. So our last focus area is the trails.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We've had great feedback over the last year and a half, but trails in most communities is always the number one requested. Mansfield is no different, and loud and clear. People love the developed sections of the Walnut Creek Linear Park system and want more, and rightfully so. We are behind in our standards of the number of miles of trails that we need today with our current population and going forward. And even in this round so far, the early survey results and the open house attendees last week, I think 75% of the people that came, that was the first thing they wanted to talk about was trails. And so that is going to be a priority, I believe, in this plan after it goes through all the boards and commissions and city council for adoption. Do believe that trails will be a very high or number one priority. People love the Walnut Creek system, and so the top goal for us is to make sure we complete that from our eastern to western city limits. And so we've got a couple of sections right now completed, a couple of gaps in the middle, and then the edges going east and west. And we're working on either design or master planning and acquisition of land of multiple sections at this time. So we hope that we will be able to accomplish that early on in the 10-year plan. After that, we've got about another 90 miles of trails on our master plan. So after we complete this important spine through the middle of the city, we want to start working on those spine trails around the city. So overall, a loop around the outer edge of the city, and then kind of mini loops throughout that connect into the Walnut Creek system. Ultimately, we want everyone's neighborhoods to be able to connect to our trail system. We don't want people to have to get in their car to get to a park or get to their school or get to a retail center. We want people to be able to have that option to walk or bike through the trail system in a safe way and not have to use the city streets to do that if possible. So we're hearing loud and clear people want more. We're behind on our standards, and I believe the priority will be to deliver more trails, more trails, more trails.
Absolutely. And trails are really great because they do hit so many of our different targets. We have a wide range of users. We have all ages are using the trails. We have walkers, we have runners, we have bikers, we have strollers. They give us the opportunity for events, things like 5Ks and hikes and things like that with the trails. And they also help solve a lot of those problems we talked about with proximity, where if there's a part of town that doesn't have a park near them, but there's not any land that we could build a park, if we can at least eke out a little trail, then you have not only the recreation of the trail itself, but then access to a park without having to drive and things like that. So they really hit a lot of points for us and really are important, a huge part of this plan for sure.
Yeah, and we've also, it's not just about the concrete trails, the paved trails. We have requests for soft surface trails and nature trails, and so it's larger than just the concrete. We want to make sure everybody understands that. We're hearing the same kind of high level feedback and requests for all trail types, so we will be working on that.
And our bike lanes, we have a bike master plan, and the bike lanes are included in all of the trail talk also there. Okay, so what should we do? The projects, that's the big $1 million question, or $100-something million question, I guess, as it were. So what kinds of things should we build? So we're going to kind of run through all the projects that we have. So these are citywide projects, the big projects that are really the high dollar ones, the ones that affect more people and are wider. And I just want to point out, I know I've already told you to take the survey. Take the survey. So one of the most important things to point out right now is that not all of these projects are going to be in the final plan. This is our draft. This is the draft of the master plan. So this is everything that our committee came up with in order to address those focus areas that we talked about. So there's more on here than we can do in 10 years. And we would love to do it all, but we cannot quite get to all of it. So we're using all of the feedback that we get from all of you guys, and then also from work sessions with our stakeholders like council and park board. And all of that feedback is going to help us not only make the cuts and eliminate some projects that are not as popular, but also set the priority order. So what's going to come first is truly dependent on what you guys say. So if you have something that you feel strongly about, take the survey. Tell your friends to take the survey, tell your neighbors to take the survey. We really need as much feedback as possible to make sure that we really are getting the projects in the right order that you guys want to see. So going through, here we go. So first up is building a large multi-generational recreation center with fitness, aquatics, and classroom spaces. Location TBD. So this is a new Big Mac, as Matt said. An entirely new rec center, something like the Brick, something like the rec in Grand Prairie, or Garland, Grapevine. Yep, the J one, the G one, yeah, oh, I can't even say any letters here. Yes, so entirely new facility. We do not have a location by any means. All of that would depend on how big and what else was being developed and money.
Yep.
So there we go. All of it depends on money. So next up would be renovating the library. So the library already has plans to, within the next 10 years, move to a new facility. Correct? 10 years-ish?
Well, yeah, so they're working right now on expanding the existing library to give them more program space, and it's on the citywide list of projects to also develop a new facility.
Yes.
Yeah.
At some point, they would like to move into a new facility. So when they move into a new facility, then our goal would be to take over their building. It's adjacent to our MAC, so they can share all the services, but then let that be a dedicated center for active adults. So our seniors would have space for fitness, they'd have space for meeting rooms and classes and things like that. And again, they'd be right there with the MAC, so they could use all the things that are at the MAC as well.
Yep.
The Nature Education Center at Oliver Nature Park. So that was something that was developed as part of the overall Oliver Master Plan when the park opened in 2014. So that is on the list. It is still on the list. That would be a space that they could have classrooms, and you could also have meetings and rental space and things like that. We know the Nature Park is incredibly popular. All the programming is really great. And so this would be a way to expand that and offer a better variety there.
Sure. Shade structures, yeah. So again, this is, in today's world, the expectation from the general public is to have your spectator areas or your athletic fields covered with shade, and also your playgrounds as much as possible. Even in the shade, some of our surfaces in our playgrounds can get up to 150 degrees. And so we don't do metal slides anymore, those of us that experienced that and did survive our childhood, but we don't do metal anymore. But even the plastic can get very, very hot. And so what we will try to do is incorporate shade with every project going forward, and then try to catch up on some of the ones that are existing that still have a useful life of 10 years or more, and try to add some shade to accommodate that. I think you're seeing the same thing at the school district around the city, that they are also doing the same, just to try to battle the sun and the heat in Texas.
Right, absolutely. Okay, we want to replace aging playground equipment. So as Matt said earlier, a lot of our playgrounds really are getting older, and not only are they nearing the end of their life expectancy, which it's not just that they don't look good. That's when you start to get into safety issues, so we certainly don't want to hit that. But also there's a lot to be said for the more modern equipment. Has different amenities, different features. So if you've been to Bell Park, our newest park, it has a really cool little elevator slide thing that the kids love. So, one thing that's really nice is to be able to offer different playgrounds where each park is like a different experience. It kind of gives you an excuse and to get out more. That's what we want, is for people to be outside and enjoying the parks and enjoying fresh air and nature and spending time with their family together. So by having the parks have, whether it's a full theme or even just different unique structures, then that gives them more reasons to get out and more variety.
Definitely.
So that's there. Okay, and expanding the MAC. We already kind of touched on that, adding a fitness space so that there would be indoor fitness, adding some aquatics there, and a second gymnasium, which the second gym would be incredible in order to expand our availability for pickleball time.
Definitely.
Pickleball is incredibly popular at the MAC, and we know that their time is limited. We would love to be able to give them more time, but we have the one gym and we have a lot of programs. So like everything at the MAC, we have to make hard cuts. So a second gym there would give us literally double the amount of time we could dedicate to pickleball and being indoor. It would also, we get this question a lot, have indoor walking options. Yes. So both the new rec center and the MAC would have spaces, indoor tracks, which is something that we definitely hear a lot. Okay, aquatic center.
Family Aquatic Center?
Yes.
Yeah, so again, this is something that our standards show that we should have a couple of these developed in the next 10 years. Again, smaller scale from Hawaiian Falls, but something that could offer a couple of slides, maybe a small little lazy river, a zero depth entry, lots of shade, lots of party space. People love to rent pools for parties, and so this would be more affordable than going to a large Hurricane Harbor, something like that. Not overwhelming for the little ones. Moms and dads would be able to see all their kids, without having to be physically there. They can be close in proximity, and so just feel like it's a much more comfortable environment than some of the large regional water parks.
Right, similar to Stovall Park in Arlington off Sublette Road if you've been over there.
Yep.
So, yes, Crystal just asked new rec center. Yes, that is what we have on our list. We have a brand new rec center we would like to build, as well as expanding the MAC. So in both cases, kind of hitting that sort of need for an indoor rec center. So then we have completing the Walnut Creek Linear Trail, which is incredibly popular. As we covered with all the trail discussions, we have sections in progress. We have the map. We're not that far, but we've got to get that done. And then the Spine Trail, as Matt said, which is the outer loop and all the inner trails that would connect more. That one is going to definitely take a long time. It's a lot of miles, but it would be amazing.
But some of it we don't have to develop ourselves. Right. Having the master plan, what it enables us to do as a new subdivision or development comes in, and we have a section of trail in the master plan that is supposed to run through that area of the city. We actually work with the development, and in most cases they will actually build that trail for us. And so especially in the southwest and southeast quadrants of the city that are largely undeveloped, the developers can actually help to implement some of that trail much quicker as a part of their development. So.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that we have this master plan and even a trail master plan, because we are able to know the basic ideas of where we want things to go. So as developments are coming in, we can say, wait, you got to move this over. We want a trail to go through here. And so we're not backwardsly trying to fit things in like we have to do in some areas that are already too developed. Okay, so Britton Park. That's a park that's in the city of Mansfield, but operated by Grand Prairie Parks and Recreation right now, because it's on the lake. And when the lake was built, Jopo Lake was built, Grand Prairie took over all of the lakefront property. I'm sure Mansfield appreciated it at the time. Mansfield probably could not have handled that. But that would be our goal, would be to take over operations of that. Add some kayak launches, boat launch, eventually camping opportunities, really give Mansfield residents lake access opportunity there.
Yes.
At that location. Our nature education program does kayak tours from there right now, but we would like to really take over the whole park. It is not really being used right now by Grand Prairie, and so we definitely see a lot of potential there that we can.
Yeah, and that one's right at the bend in Seton Road. If anyone's wondering where that access would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in a park that needs some parks anyway. So. Mm-hmm. Okay, tennis center at Legacy High School. You can explain that one.
Yeah, so we've been working with MISD for a few years in partnering with them to provide additional tennis courts. We only have 3 actual courts in our inventory at Chandler Park, and we're behind in our standards. But as we try to catch up, what we've done is partner with them to use the 10 courts at Legacy High School for public use, community use. Now, because it's on the school campus, we can't do it during school hours. We can't obviously do it when the Legacy team is using that, or any of the other junior highs. They do offer some programs out there. They're not lit courts either. And so there's limited access, but we are getting some more public use. The plan with this project would be to formalize that relationship, turn the facility in having an actual pro shop, add a couple of new courts that would be championship style courts, lights on all then 12 courts, new parking. So that way we would have some dedicated courts for the public at all times, and then be able to still capitalize on the other ones when the school is not using that. So most communities have some kind of community tennis center, and this would be an opportunity for us to partner with MISD to provide that in a joint use agreement.
Absolutely. Okay, building a second off-leash dog park, location to be determined. And building a citywide standalone skate park. So we know the skateboarders enjoy the little skate plaza at Chandler Park, but it is not a full dedicated skateboard park like we have seen in other communities. So we would be building some sort of larger, it could still be part of a other park, yeah, but it would be a much larger space with more of the, not rides, but
the bowls and
more features,
more
and
components.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Yes, good components. Exercise stations, which we discussed, to new and existing parks whenever possible, and splash pads to new and existing parks whenever possible. So we know the splash pad's popular. It's a great way to offer some aquatics. We would love to have them in every park. It's not always possible. Sometimes there's not enough space. Sometimes it has to do with running the water or whatever. But when possible, we would like to add more splash pads. Okay. So Quadrant Projects. So if you may know Mansfield, there's a city, Mansfield, right there. So for planning, the city breaks it up into these quadrants: northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. So we also have smaller projects that are more specific to those locations. So maybe it's adding neighborhood parks, maybe it's a few upgrades at a park that's just replacing a playground or adding a couple tennis courts at Chandler Park. Smaller projects like that. That we don't have on the list and we're not going to run down now, mostly because we're going to run out of time. But if you go to our website, mansfieldparks.com, there's a little tab, it's a blue tab for the master plan. Click on that. You can read all the projects for all the different quadrants as well as all the city projects, a little bit more detail on each of them, and get into all of that stuff there. So
yeah, and that's one of the things that we want to emphasize going forward is we want to be held accountable. We want people to say, why aren't you building the park in my neighborhood? Why aren't you building on this side of town? So they've been broken down for the first time in this plan by quadrant so that hopefully everybody can easily see where they live and the projects that are being proposed close to your home. And your input and feedback is going to help us prioritize those quadrant by quadrant and the citywide. So please give us your feedback. We want to know what's important. One area of town may have a different need than another area of town, and probably because of what they have or don't have. So please give us that input so that we can start prioritizing around the city.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what we looked into when we talked about the inventory, really analyzing, where our parks are and where our people are. And then on the same note, where the growth is happening. So where new people will be. And so we're kind of, we're trying to, in some areas, we're trying to make up for lost time and add services where they don't have them. And in other areas, we're trying to get ahead of the ball and really be prepared for the growth that's coming. So we want you to know, we know you need a park by your house. We want everyone to have a park by their house, and we're definitely working on it, which is why we focus so much on the quadrants, so that you can be aware of that also. So what's next? What's next, Matt?
For the plan?
Yes.
All right,
exactly.
so we're winding down. The COVID-19 delayed us a little bit. We were planning on having this round of public engagement in March and April and having this plan through all the boards and to city council by June. We tapped the brakes as everyone did over the last 6 months, but we're finding different ways. We used some virtual meetings the first time, but even with our open house, we socially distanced to try to get this feedback. In today's age, a lot of people like to take surveys and give their feedback with social media. So Ann does a great job in creating videos, trying to educate and make people aware. And so our goal from this round, the survey is going to close next week, September the 10th. We'll take this round of feedback, overlay that with everything we've heard in the first 18 months, make sure we're still on track. And then from that, start meeting with the park board, city council to prioritize the projects.
Right. And that's where we're making the cuts. So not all these projects, all the ones you're excited about, not all of them might make the list, which is why we need your feedback so much. So let us know what you care about so we can make sure it makes the list and set it in the priority order and get to it first. So everybody who's asking, I've had emails and comments in here asking, when's it going to happen? What's the timeline on all of this?
Yeah. So after we make these final cuts and decisions of what goes in the plan, we hope to have this adopted by everybody, including the city council, by the end of October. Once that happens, our primary funding source is through half-cent sales tax of the Mansfield Park Facilities Development Corporation. We have a number of other funding sources as well, but most of the projects get funded through that half-cent sales tax. So that board has a 10-year strategic plan, and that's basically their funding plan. And so what we will do is take the feedback and what gets adopted in this plan, the highest priorities, and try to start fitting those into the 10-year plan. Some of which could start as early as next year. But as Ann referenced, right now we have about $250 million worth of projects, and they're not all going to get funded and completed in 10 years. So we need to know what are the highest priorities so we can start fitting them into that plan. So that would be the goal as soon as the plan is adopted by council, hopefully at the end of October.
Yes, absolutely. So any questions? So we've kind of hit on a couple as we've been going. As far as the timeline and things like that, it's really all dependent on once we get our final plan and we can sort of set up and figure out how it is we're going to pay for it, which is probably the next most common question that we hear is, how are we going to pay for it? So as Matt said, the half-cent sales tax, so that was voted in 1992. Mansfield voters approved that. So we don't get your property taxes, only a tiny portion of property taxes for some maintenance, but for the most part, we are run by that half-cent sales tax. So your tax bill is not the park's problem, but when you go to Target and you spend $100 and you have $8 in tax, we're getting a half cent of that $8. And so all of that adds up, and that's how we fund. So some of that money includes money every year for maintenance and replacement. So things like replacing playgrounds. So sometimes it can be funded in that. Some of that money includes new development, but not enough. As we were saying earlier, a new rec center is probably $60 million. We don't have $60 million in sales tax. You guys have not gone to Target that much.
So you're saying shop locally,
exactly.
eat in Mansfield restaurants.
Yes, spend all your money in Mansfield and get us $60 million. But beyond that, then we have other options we can look at. There's grants available, there's corporate donations, there are bond elections we can do, lots of different things, but we really are not even close to planning or discussing that until we figure out what our projects are and what the highest priority is. Because if we know that the smaller projects are the highest priority, we're going to start, working on those as we go. If it's the big stuff, that's the number one priority. Then we'll look at big options. So Brandon asks, is there any thought put forth for designing and building a playground that is tailored to residents with disabilities? So absolutely. I will tell you one other thing with talking about the new playgrounds. When we were saying how the new playgrounds have different amenities and things. So more modern playgrounds now are designed. So it used to be things were just accessible, and now they're more inclusive. So it's not just that you can get a wheelchair up, but that they're designed specifically for, and not just wheelchairs, but different types of needs, different sensory issues or different accessibility issues. And they're optimized for that. So it's just a regular playground, but the way it's built is designed specifically for all different sorts of abilities and accessibility issues and things like that. So that's another bonus to replacing some of these old playgrounds, is that we'll be able to get some more modern equipment that is better optimized for that.
Yeah, all of our playgrounds are accessible, but I think some of the key terms are barrier-free. Do you have a playground that is completely barrier-free, that someone in a walker or a wheelchair can get to every aspect of that? It's very difficult sometimes with the terrain and getting to the high areas, but if we have the right situation, the right topography for parks, it can be done. And we have heard that quite a bit over the last 18 months. And so, yeah, that is definitely a priority, and we'd love to hear if you have ideas. My son has special needs, and so that's close to my heart. And so taking a look at every playground opportunity and how we can make it bigger and more and really more diverse, inclusive play.
Absolutely. Even things like there's wheelchair swings with a little platform that you can roll a wheelchair onto and actually get to swing and have that experience. And again, like so much of our issues, we're at the point right now where we're behind on all of our amenities, so we can't really afford to take out existing swings to put that in. But where we're building new, or where we're expanding or redeveloping, whether it's rearranging the layout or something, that we would have that space that we could do that, to be able to add more things like that. There's also, one of our fun topics we've discussed is senior citizen playgrounds. That's a thing. There's equipment and whole playgrounds designed specifically for seniors to do some light fitness and just have fun. And so that's a huge trend and something we would love to be able to add in. Again, whether it's a fully dedicated park or just a few amenities that we can add at an existing park to be able to offer some more variety, which is all the more reason why we need to make these upgrades so that we can offer more diverse options for everybody. Okay, so another question that we have gotten is questions about, things have been said in the past but not necessarily done, or, I thought we were getting this before, or whatever kind of thing. And we are pretty much of the argument that we are a clean slate, right?
Yeah. It
doesn't matter what happened in the past. So, it's like anything else that you're doing. You work with what you've got. And so we are here now. This is where we are. The decisions that were made, and it doesn't really matter why or what. All we know is that we are ready to take some action. We're ready to get to work. And as Matt said, this is all about being accountable to you guys. So we're putting it all out there, and we want you guys to stay involved and stay connected and stay aware of what's going on, the projects that are in the works, and keep on us by all means, because the more active and engaged everybody is, then the better we will be able to do with the follow through. And stuff always changes. Like, there's always things that come up that were not in the plans. So you want to talk about
opportunities will arise, new trends will evolve. And so just because something is not in this plan doesn't mean that we can't do it. If it becomes the highest priority for the community, then the city will absolutely capitalize on that opportunity. But we do want to make sure that staff does our due diligence, that we are engaging with the public, we are receiving that input, and then making sure that the elected officials have that information so that they can make the best decision possible. Social media has kind of changed that, and people are very available these days, but we still feel like that is a vital role for us, is to listen to our users and the Mansfield residents and make sure that we're putting that in front of the park board and city council, because they have so many issues that they're dealing with, and this is our world. So how can we make sure that our world makes it up to their level, and we're helping them make the best possible decision?
Absolutely. And that's also why we grouped a lot of our content into like these focus areas and these overall themes of things that we've heard, so that as other projects come up or other things come up that aren't something we thought of, but if we know that it aligns with the recreation option that people like, or the trails that people like, or the comfort features in the parks that they like, if we know that it aligns with other overall themes that we've heard, then that helps us know that we're still on the right track, and that even if it wasn't something in our original plan, it's still something that people are going to be on board with. So that definitely makes a big difference there. So okay, so I think we are wrapping up. We are right exactly at 8 o'clock, which is perfectly on time. If you guys have questions that we did not answer here, you can shoot an email to parks@mansfieldtexas.gov. Easiest thing is just go to the website, mansfieldparks.com. As I said, there's a little blue tab, the same color blue, that has the master plan, and that's where you're going to find everything you ever wanted to know, and all the things you didn't want to know. All the information is on there. You can go through, read all the projects, all the quadrant projects, a lot of the data as far as the standards and the benchmarks and the inventory, all that's on there. Also, we have a contact form on there. You can fill it out and staff will contact you to answer questions directly. And then, of course, most importantly, the survey.
Yes.
We have the survey on there. So right on the homepage, it says, take the survey. Please take the survey. Please tell your friends and neighbors to take the survey. And let us know what you think. You're going to go through all the projects, rate them, tell us how important it is to you so that we can make the cuts and make the big decisions and make the best plan possible for you.
At the end of that survey, there's open-ended fields. So if we're missing something, add it in.
Please let us know. Yes, absolutely. And even just great ideas. We are always here for out of the box, different things, whatever it might be. We're open to anything because this right now is the best time. This is where now's your chance. Get it in there. As we said, there will still be time later, but now is the best chance. So we want to hear from you guys. You can also still comment on the Facebook post, and we'll just respond to you in text. And then, as I said before, the full video is going to be added to the website. So if you missed it and don't want to watch it on Facebook, you can watch it there and see it there. So anything else to add?
That's it for me.
Okay, that's it for us. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Please let us know if you have any other questions. Please go to mansfieldparks.com for all the master plan information, and please take the survey.
Thanks.
Thank you.